Those of us who work with range or cattle or economics, we do a lot of programs, cow-calf programs, and typically most people are satisfied with thinking about it. It's as simple as this. In terms of livestock, if it rains and the market's good, everybody makes money. We typically have some of the lowest attendance at our programs when those two events are taking place because they don't need any answers. They know that everything's profitable. If it's dry and the market's bad, nobody's making any money, and there's really not much you can do about it other than concentrate on costs and minimize those as much as possible. It's in those periods in between when it's dry and the market's good, or when it rains and the market's bad, where most livestock producers are kind of walking the fence, and it's their management at that point in time which determines whether they make a profit or they make a loss. And I put this in here because I realize, well, with this particular offering of next generation of ag producers and the characteristics, whether they're NRCS or whether they're new producers, most of the folks here are probably drawn to this program because they have some livestock interests. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, and I know the NRCS folks on here will appreciate this. We look at an enterprise with livestock, and it's more than just a livestock. We're really managing, and we're managing resources. And there are a large number of resources out there. I've basically categorized them into these 5: natural, animal crop, equipment, personnel, and finances. And it's important to note that no decision we make as a resource manager with regards to one of these areas takes place in a vacuum. They all have effects on the other resources of our operation and interactions between those. But I put this up here so you can kind of see examples of different goals we might have if our primary emphasis is on one of these resource types versus another. Because when we come down to a livestock enterprise, and we're going to revisit these again in a minute, come back to a livestock enterprise, we talk about the most obvious and the thing we've heard about is that determines profitability in livestock is the stocking rate. Not maximizing the stocking rate, but optimizing the stocking rate. And what that really means is having some flexibility built into the herd composition or the flock composition. Flexibility meaning that we can integrate crop and forage production into our grazing program. Flexibility in that we have certain classes of our livestock that will be the first to go in a drought, and some of those that we can hang on to a little longer than normal if we get a little help from Mother Nature and have excess forage. Flexibility and optimization in regards to having grazing triggers, monitoring our resource availability and using that to tell us when to pull off our livestock and when to send some to market, using enclosures, things like that. So I throw these things out here just to talk about not just managing a particular enterprise, but managing the resources that we have at our disposal that we use in those enterprises. In that light, Megan has asked that we kind of take another poll to make sure that you haven't fallen asleep yet and to kind of get a better feel for the audience. And this is the question that we want you to start with. When we talk about, and a lot of those that are reborn to the land and those that were born in the land and new to starting out, what I want you to do is respond to this question and tell me what you think, in looking at your situation, your skills, and your operation, which of these resource areas do you think you have excess resources in? Natural, animal, equipment, personnel, and finances. Nobody has excess financial resources. looks like excess natural resources is the predominant answer, which tells me a lot of folks on this call have access or availability of land and they're trying to figure out what to do with it and how to make it more profitable. Okay, let's talk about this real quick. From that standpoint, on the natural resources, excess natural resources, one of the strategies that we typically look at is to evaluate conservation programs, programs that would allow you to generate some money by managing the natural resource, maybe to a lesser degree than optimal utilization, and maybe leasing out those resources to someone else is a way to bring additional money in if you don't want to run an enterprise yourself. Those are what just general prescriptions when we look at individuals that have excess natural resources. Okay, let's move along to the next one. And again, this is a participatory vote. What are your most limiting resource? 15, 16, 17. That's just about everybody. And this is not all that unusual, because we talk about limiting resources, whether it's an ag producer or a widget producer in Peoria. We talk about what the most limiting factors are. It's usually either time or money. And that's what we're seeing here. Time, money, and actually equipment, in this case, is showing up, infrastructure. And what that means is time, and if time and money are the limiting resources, number one, we talk about new enterprises or increasing profitability. The first thing that obviously brings to light is whatever it is we want to add or implement into the operation, we need to do so very slowly, do a little test run, and then expand gradually. Most of the folks that get in trouble financially in an ag operation are those that tried to expand too quickly and became over leveraged. And so if finances are the issue, one of the primary issues, then what we need to do is take baby steps and to experiment slowly, do a test run, expand it out a little bit, and then continue expanding as we see positive results. On the personnel side, what that does, that really, if time is the limiting resource, what that tells us is we need to pay particular attention to those enterprises that we want to add or select, and make sure that they are complementary time commitment as well as on the calendar. Make sure that they fit in with the other time commitments that we have, and they don't overlap. And the most intensive portion of the year coincides with the kids' soccer, the kids' football schedule, or other time or work commitments. So that helps us to identify enterprises and eliminate other enterprises that might conflict with that. So thank you for voting on that. It kind of gives us a good indication of the issues and concerns of the audience that we have.